All right, and we are live. Hey, everybody. Welcome to another Gutenberg Live QA. And I think the first order of business is that we hinted at this last time, but I think we're going to change the name of this, right, to the Gutenberg News Hour, maybe we'll call it. Because well, we have, we get questions, but the trickle of questions or the stream of questions has have moved to a trickle. So we want to, continue to cover Gutenberg the best we can. We want to give people the opportunity to ask us questions in a live capacity. But we also want to cover news, which is what we've been doing more of lately. So maybe this will be the last Gutenberg Live QA, as well as the first Gutenberg News Hour show. So, hey, Zach, how are you?
I'm doing good, man. I think that sounds good. Like you said, folks' questions early on, I think a lot have been answered. We haven't heard a ton more, but we do want to keep talking about it. I think it is deep waters to say we're going to be the all-inclusive news show wherever, or even catch everything. So maybe some audience involvement could be helping us out, letting us know. But I think that this will be fun, and we're trying to keep a pulse on things, like you said, and let folks know and how it affects on the dev and user side and stuff like that. So excited to be here. Last episode, first episode, season two,
Yeah.
yeah, something like that.
Yeah, let's call it season 2. Here we go. Yeah. So, and we're also working on getting a few more guests. We're talking to a few folks at WordPress VIP, bringing them on the show, and we still owe you an episode with the folks at Human Made, because they were supposed to come on when seemingly the entire East Coast lost power. So, so we're changing the format up a little bit. Maybe live Q&A limits the scope of what we're doing. So, Gutenberg News Hour is maybe a little bit better. And then we'll have more robust show notes to go along with the YouTube description as well. So I think it's going to be a good change all around. So I have been. This is my first week back after being away for about 8 or 9 days in Disney World. So I've been catching up on the Gutenberg news, but Zach, I know that you've been in the thick of it. So how have you been since our last event?
Well, maybe we could even share, like, our last event was a pretty big async offline collaboration with VIP, WordPress VIP, doing some free content for them around enterprise level clients. And that was a butt kicker, if I could say that on this show,
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
I dug deep into ACF migrations and CMB2 migrations and trying to do what we can, and even saw some stuff that's going to be coming in future versions of Gutenberg to help with that. So that was super exhausting, but yeah, have still been continue to work on it. But that was the big last thing, and we did that together, and we're just kind of catching up now, man. So I hope Disney was great, magical, you know.
Absolutely. My 13-month-old daughter loved meeting characters. So, if you follow me on Twitter or Instagram, you'll see a bunch of those pictures from the last week or so. But man, I was nervous. You don't know how kids are going to react to meeting Mickey Mouse or whatever, and she loved it. So, I'm glad to be back in the saddle, though. I brought some at least warmer weather with me. When I left, it was like 40 degrees. And now it's like 60 something. It's cloudy, but I'll take it. So the first thing that I noticed when I got back, so this actually happened while I was away, but Gutenberg 2.7 of the plugin came out, and with it, pagination blocks, a sidebar API, and some UI improvements. So a whole bunch of it looks like a lot of under the hood stuff, but I haven't been able to test it. As I just alluded, I've been away. Um, but the pagination block looks really neat. Zach, I don't know if you've been able to download and install it. I'm going to work on my UI changes video today after this event.
Yeah, have played with a few of these things a little bit. Like you said, the pagination stuff is pretty cool. Being able to put page breaks in and kind of have Gutenberg manage that, which is cool, definitely for the user end and folks that like to break up content. I often like to see it all just one. But the other thing you mentioned, the sidebar API, so being able to control via at the moment there's a little three dot menu up at the top, and you could add one of your own sidebars via plugin or something like that, and do something custom, whatever you have there. And that's rolled out. They're also working on a full screen takeover. I don't think that was a part of it, but kind of the underlying functionality for that is pretty cool and gonna allow folks to do a lot more. And if you had something before that wasn't really a block and it was really just metadata or something about the post or something, and you needed a place for that, well, now you have like a good API and a place for that.
Absolutely, and that's a good point you make about the pagination or pagination, however folks want to pronounce that. But I know that that's something that I don't like. Right, I like to consume all of if it's one piece of content, I like to consume it all as one page. I've actually written like a little PHP scraper to like make paginated articles one page by like clicking the link and grabbing the content. Because I was like really bored one Saturday night. Since I have a kid, I don't find myself being very bored at night. But this I know this is something that publishers, editors like to do a lot. We'll talk about this in a bit, but working with VIP and their kind of clientele, we've learned a lot, some of which we can and will talk about with those videos. But I think that this is a nice touch. I think it's catering to a good piece of the audience that Gutenberg is going after, right? Because the feeling in general is that editors are very excited to have a lot more functionality within the WordPress editor without needing to go to a third party solution like a page builder. And Developers are a little bit nervous. So there's again, I don't like it, but I mean, I don't like consuming content like that, but I am definitely excited to see that. Or I'm excited to see more things for editors.
Yeah, agreed. Something along that line, we began to kind of test what are the limits of how much you could lock down and control content and who can do what. And so that was something cool to explore, and still the user capabilities tie in a simple but comprehensive way is not fully there yet. So that's something we kind of explored as well along those lines. And I don't know that we have anything super new to report, but that is something that is being discussed and will hopefully let you lock down all sorts of things. And we even stumbled across, that with block templates and controlling what fields are available, you could even begin to do some of that at the user level. And it might not completely behave exactly as you might imagine, but it does things, and you can begin to hook into that with just traditional, WordPress, PHP and stuff, pulling in your global user or post objects and things like that. They even did a patch in the core Gutenberg to allow, like, when you are filtering what blocks are available, it now passes in a post object. So you can actually check for that and you don't have to find it another way. So things like that are continuing to evolve, which is cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we will touch on that a little bit in a second, but first I want to kind of leapfrog in our show notes to the there's a video on YouTube of Brian Richards, a good friend of ours, uh generating a WordPress block, a Gutenberg block in 1 minute. And I just
One
wanted to
minute.
1 minute, and I just wanted to share that because I think it's very cool. I'm a big fan of things that Brian does, and it's well, as the name implies, it's a very short video to consume. So I just wanted to call that out. We will be sure to link that in the description for the video. I'll drop it in the chat right now. Oh no, Zach just dropped it in the
Beat you to
chat.
it.
Yep.
Yes.
So that's just a cool thing that I wanted to call out. So, and were you there? Was this at WordCamp Miami? Was this the Miami workshop, or was this something different?
I have to go check it out myself. I don't think it is. I think this is something different. Maybe not. Oh no, maybe this was from WordCamp Miami, the WPCLI. Yep.
Cool,
Yep,
very
that
cool.
was at WordCamp Miami. Very cool.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's just something I wanted to call out. And then Zach, you dropped something in here about Gutenberg and iOS, right?
Oopsies, we forgot about iOS. Just kidding. They've got it covered. But there was a discussion lately about how well Gutenberg will work with the iOS apps. Remember, because we have some functionality built there, and Calypso made efforts, and you have native efforts, and all of that. So that is now being flagged as something to discuss and work on. So hopefully, we'll see some integration there. And all that really means is that it should eventually just work in all scenarios. And I'm not sure how they're going to handle that. Different approaches you could take, but something to be aware of if you are an iOS user. In fact, I was publishing to my WordPress.com blog this morning with my phone app, so I still want it to work, and that would be cool. So that was something I saw go around, and just even this morning in the discussion in Slack, they were talking about it a bit.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a hard nut to crack, right? Like Beaver Builder, for example, doesn't work at all on touchscreen devices, and understandably so. You have so much you have so much flexibility in their functionality that um, you'd maybe have to build a mobile app to take advantage of some of the things on a touch device, right? Because you have JavaScript APIs that can simulate touch events and stuff like that, but they're not smooth. They're not nearly as smooth as they could or should be. Um, so I'll be interested to see what the core team does to kind of solve that problem, right? Whether it's just kind of a push button to add blocks and then kind of push on the screen to move it up, which is what we had up until I think 2.6, where you could drag and drop
Mm-hmm.
blocks. So I'll be interested to see how they solve that. I don't envy them for having to solve that, and I commend them for trying to solve it. So
Yes, hoorah, hoorah. We also got permalinks. That was something a while ago I wasn't sure how to do. You had to like go out of Gutenberg to edit the
right.
permalink, so that's back in. I think it was in there and then out and in, and but yeah, so that's cool.
Yeah, that's a good point, right? That was one of those things that I overlooked. Because I mean, I'm sure when you're creating content, um, or when you're putting a page together, the permalink isn't something I think about until I hit the Yoast SEO meta box, and it's like, what is your URL? Is it like super user friendly? And I'm like, oh, I don't know how to change this anymore. So I'm glad to see that that's back in there, right? That because that's a very important thing that we need for Gutenberg to be production ready. Is we don't want to get rid of any major functionality that exists in the classic editor.
Yeah.
Cool.
I don't know which direction you want to go. We could go in a couple ways. We've got some themey stuff to talk about, and I want to just give a shout out that I believe that Mike McAllister is here with us in the crowd, and want to give a shout out to him and some of the stuff he was doing, kind of as a segue to theme discussion stuff. Joe, if that's cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if you haven't checked it out, atomicblocks.com is a really cool little setup of collection of blocks as well as a theme that's GB ready, and you could go there and grab it. And this is like the perfect model, folks, of how to do this well in terms of Gutenberg being a disruptor, an opportunity to release new products, plugins, and even how to get stuff out there free is something to start. And I believe this is by Array Themes, who I've been a huge fan of. There are not a ton of small, really quality theme shops. And actually, I know it's a Gutenberg theme. I'm using latest on the new JavaScript for WP build, which is one of their non-Gutenberg themes, but it'll still handle everything that they need. So shout out there. And along those lines, not just shameless plug, but y'all, like, cool example of what you can be doing, and some things to check out to learn a bit more and model your stuff after. But
Absolutely.
also, Joe, you had caught something around theme development too on a more technical level, changes in core and stuff like that.
Yeah, so real quick, Mike just in the chat said that new blocks are dropping today for Atomic Blocks. So if you haven't checked it out yet,
Hello.
definitely check it out. It's one of the cooler Gutenberg projects that's out there, and like super useful too. It's this is I mean, I can't speak for Mike, but it seems like more than just a proof of concept. This is like a truly useful thing that is very early adoptery. So really cool to see that stuff.
Yes, I love it. Super cool. Hey man, this is a news show then. If we're catching breaking news right
I
here
know,
on the
right?
channel.
I
Okay,
know.
cool.
Absolutely. Yeah, so the other thing is, well, so we'll drop this in the chat too. This is just a extensibility, a theme support gist that I came across like literally right before we went live here. And it's just a few pieces of code that you can add to your theme to do some uh Gutenberg ready stuff. And I believe that some of these things have changed initial implementation. This is the current code set now. So if you want to uh, get your theme Gutenberg ready, this gist right here has some excellent starter code for that.
You drop that in the channel there, man.
I am dropping it right now.
Cool.
Yeah. Yeah, so absolutely, so it's just something I came across quick that I thought would be very useful. It'll definitely be useful to me, as I didn't talk to Zach about this beforehand, but we're now that I'm back from vacation and we we just released these videos for WordPress VIP. We're going to change focus to a new project, newish project that we teased at. We explicitly announced, I think, about a month ago. And that's our Gutenberg theming course. So I know that we'll be working pretty hard on that over the next couple of weeks, hopefully to be released early May. And I'm saying that we're like almost at early May, but I'm saying that because I know that we're both doing a couple of other Gutenberg related events, right? I'm doing a two iThemes events, one free, one paid. And I'd like to have the course ready for that. And I think you're doing Guten Talk. Is
Yeah,
that
the Gutentag.events, a UK-led initiative of chats with the community, online discussions, and there's one coming up May 9th. And check out Gutentag.events. Oh, I should drop the link in there. And we have actually one of the sessions is probably going to be around theming. And so if you are a theme shop and hear this before then, or know somebody that is running one, all sorts of different kinds, would love to hear from you about maybe being involved in that. And we'll also be talking about how agencies can transition will be the other session there. So yeah, some cool in-depth, not just kind of intro, but really real world applying, really beginning to think about taking these steps to get ready. So yeah, cool stuff there, and as well as the stuff you're doing.
nice? Very nice. Yeah. So I know that I'm going to find that link especially helpful as I start to not just like test around, but test around in a way that aids education, right? Because doing it is one thing, and then doing it and properly explaining it and doing it the right way is a whole other thing. So I'm very excited that I came across that link earlier. And so we just uh, nice. Thank you, Mike. We just dropped both of those links in the chat. They'll be in the description as well. So, with that, let's talk about the stuff that we did for WordPress VIP. And we have a blog post here, with stuff that they've published that we can talk about. So, let me drop that in there. So WordPress VIP is taking a nice it was really nice to work with them on this because they are also taking an education initiative, right? If you don't know, WordPress VIP is kind of a premium services arm of Automatic, and they work with big clients to host their website, help them manage their website, a lot of stuff in the enterprise space, and they've taken an initiative to publish a few courses that are available to anyone to use for kind of imagining WordPress in an enterprise space. So Zach and I teamed up with WordPress VIP on this to produce a short course about kind of converting, doing some development work to aid with enterprises doing this. and then helping the editors of those enterprises kind of understand the scope and how it's going to affect them when WordPress 5.0 comes out. Yeah, so
Yeah, and just to expand off of that, I mean, folks can go check out that link and check it out. But like we said, it kind of broke down into a few general areas of converting custom content into blocks. And when do you do that? When do you not? And what do you really need to be ready for in terms of even just user training or in terms of database migrations, right? So the whole level, looking at that sort of stuff. Luckily, shortcodes are the easiest. So if you want preview shortcodes, that's cool. And then getting into some of the access control and user permission stuff, which is still evolving. And we can't say this for certain, but hopefully we'll have a chance to continue to do stuff like this with them. It was a really cool opportunity, and they are definitely, as a provider and an example in the community, I know they're tied to Automatic, so we might think of them differently, but they've got clients too and are out there being proactive, really trying to get folks ready and prepare, even though they might not do it for some time to come. Really cool. So hope those resources help other folks. I mean, the courses there are kind of geared towards VIP clients, some of the other ones, but we also have our own, which you could check out as well.
yeah, absolutely. And so I kind of wanted to talk about some of the things that we learned in this process, right? Um, they have a lesson here on the page called "Testing in Gutenberg Ramp." I don't know that that's I don't know that that's ready to be published yet, though. So I'm not sure that we could or should talk about that yet. I know that an announcement from them is coming soon. But I think maybe the most interesting thing to talk about is the advanced custom field stuff. So yeah, so
Yep.
we when trying to come up with these videos, we wanted stuff that we know a lot of people, bigger sites are using. I know that I've worked on enterprise sites at my time at Crowd Favorite that used ACF. We're big fans of ACF, and um, we wanted to imagine what that would look like if the fields were not just a meta box at the bottom of the post, but were blocks that you could use. And it turns out that we hit a few roadblocks, no pun intended there. And we learned a few lessons about really why developers don't like ACF. And that's not, I'm not editorializing here. I know a lot of developers who do not like ACF. So, Zach, I mean, you took the brunt of that. Do you want to kind of talk about some of the things you learned about ACF and how it does things?
Yeah, sure. Well, first, let's talk about kind of at a high level migration, what might be involved in that, which is you have the option of continuing to have ACF fields work as they normally would. And when you build your pages with ACF fields, and CMB2, by the way, kind of let's use those interchangeably and just kind of say custom fields maybe,
Mhm.
although there are some technical differences. You could normally have the content editor displaying. When I use ACF fields or custom fields, I like to remove the content editor and just have it all custom fields. But with Gutenberg, it would display as normal, and then except for some JavaScript that might break things, like your field should mostly work already. So you kind of have that by setup, and not all of your data you might want to go into blocks, right? Because then you have to update your templates, and instead of calling the field and repeaters and things like that, you're just calling the content. But some of it you might want to. And so at first we were looking at, okay, how do we build a block that automatically checks if that field is there? And then if you could turn off that field, it'll just pull it into a block. And as soon as you go to add block, it'll have that data saved. And so with simple stuff, that was actually kind of cool to do. But then you get down into how data is structured and the data of ACF fields and repeater fields and some of their more complex stuff like that. Versus even how CMB2 does it. When it gets pulled into Gutenberg, by the time you get it, it's not always in the format so that you can deserialize it, or there might be a lot of builder code that you'd kind of have to pull from ACF or build yourself that figured out if it's a repeater field, here would be all the names, and this is what you should look for and automatically pull in. So I thought we'd be able to get a lot further, and I think I could if I had more time, but we were working pretty quick to get these videos out and keep it current and relevant and just kind of do what we could out of the box, so to say. And so I think that there's some changes coming so that we could have a bit more control over how we're saving data and how we could pull it in easily. But it does raise, after I did all of this, I was like, wait, but would you even want these to be blocks, or does it make sense to just lock them down how you normally would? And it kind of comes back to, even though WordPress is changing a ton, it doesn't mean that we have to use WordPress out of the box. We could still take other approaches. And so I think those were kind of the main ones I hit. It really had to do with mapping data into attributes and pulling it in reliably and not. And then, like, there's private fields, and when stuff is named with an underscore, how can you work around that and get it? So there was just if anybody wants to try it, if anybody doesn't need to, I wouldn't recommend it, but I'd love to hear thoughts on all that. But um,
Yeah, and this
yeah,
is just to point this out. This is with the current version of ACF, and I know that the ACF team is working on their own integrations with Gutenberg. So we decided to kind of jump the gun a little bit. Just to, it was exploratory. It was,
yeah,
we wanted to kind of see how it would work from a user standpoint, which is generally how I look at those things. I'm a developer by trade, but I've been working heavily on the user side of Gutenberg. I really liked exploring the how much of a WordPress template, uh, or how much of the templating aspect can I remove if we have ACF blocks, right? Because if you have the ACF block, or if you have ACF installed, you still need to make modifications to your theme to pull in that meta in a specific space, right? Where if you have the ACF blocks and they're working reliably, you maybe don't need that template. You maybe have a big full width blank WordPress template, and then you can use Gutenberg to fill in the meta wherever you see fit, right? So maybe you want to have the byline in a different place for different types of posts, or maybe you have like related posts that you want to place in different areas, and you have that repeater field, or that related post field. Maybe you have a repeater field and you want to put it in different places depending on the type of post or page that you're making. And with ACF blocks or custom field blocks, if we're speaking more generally, you can totally do that. So it was maybe a more difficult task than we thought it would be. However, I think it was definitely a uh, fruitful exploration, maybe for both of us, because we definitely learned a lot in that process.
yeah. And honestly, when you watch the videos, don't know how much you're expecting going in, but just remember, like, there, hopefully we did save you a lot of time, because there was a lot of exploration there. And like I said, hopefully as see more solutions come out and things evolve, we'll hopefully be able to keep that up to date, because definitely something important to consider.
Absolutely. And we should just make clear that WordPress VIP caters to their audience, but these videos that we worked with them to create are free for everybody. You sign up,
Woohoo!
you register with an email address, and they'll give you access to this free course. So, um, I mean, it's definitely something that is worth looking into. Maybe we caveat that with we kind of assume that users have taken um, our courses as well. So we do, maybe our courses are a prerequisite to this course. So that's something important to point out. Um, but aside from that, it's a free course. It's a great initiative by the WordPress VIP team, and I think I can speak for both of us when I say that we're very happy that we get to work with them on it. So
Yeah, super cool. Um, I don't know if we have other questions, my friend. If we want to talk more about news or get technical, what are you feeling here?
there was one more thing that I wanted to talk about with
Cool.
with the Gutenberg course, the VIP videos. And it's something that I learned through the process, which was the ability to create block templates. I totally did not know that you could do that. Um, and it blew my mind because it's really cool. So it's not something that I talk about in my course because I'm just kind of talking about Gutenberg out of the box, right?
Mhm.
This is the stuff that you can do with Gutenberg when it comes out of the box. And I alluded to templates in some way, shape, or form, but I didn't really see them in action. So getting to do that with kind of seeing Zach code it up, which by the way, if you are if you're a WordPress theme developer, like coding up block templates is so easy.
Yeah, let me see if
Um,
I can pull up a gist here. It's super
yeah.
simple.
And just being able to do that was really cool. And I think it's something important that publishers are going to be keen on, right? Because um, even if you run a website that has multiple authors, you don't want to give you maybe don't want to give authors so much control that they can do all sorts of stuff, right? Um, and block templates really helps you lock down um kind of the extent to which blocks can be used by any user role, right? And something that we discovered, right? I tested this out. I don't know if you went on to test it out even more.
Yes,
Uh,
I did.
cool. Just kind of like to make sure that it wasn't like a fluke that I stumbled upon, but we were talking. I was like, well, can you lock a template down only for like authors and below, or can you look at the users if the user has a specific role and change the template a bit. And it turns out you can if you register the block on init or shortly after somewhere where we already have the user role defined, you can check and see if a user has that role, set some parameters, and boom, you have the same block template that's maybe slightly different for different roles. So
Yep.
in the gist that Zach just posted, um, the example that I looked at or we looked at was template lock, right? If you have template lock set to true, users can't add new blocks or move blocks. They can still move blocks, but they can't add new blocks to the page. So
You
what
can
we did
just
was,
edit them.
yeah. So what we did was we checked the user role. This is not in the gist. This is somewhere else. Check the user role and then kind of set that true to be a variable. And if the user's an admin, set it to false. And if it's not admin, set it to true. That way, admins can go in and make changes to templates without having to make changes to code, right? So um, I just thought that block templates were cool. The one thing I would like to see happen with block templates eventually is, and I'm sure, I can't imagine we won't see this because the WordPress template hierarchy is so robust that I can't imagine we're not going to see that level of flexibility come to Gutenberg. Is I would love to see different block templates for, let's say, different categories, maybe, or tags, right? The same kind of thing that we have with, you can get super granular, right? And you can have a specific template based on the post ID. So, um, that's maybe number one on my wish list as primarily a theme developer and as a user.
Yeah, this has actually come up in some discussions, not just in that regard, but in regards to being able to like change a page template and then have the whole thing change. But there's these issues of like, what do you do with existing content, right? So when templates are not locked for an admin, they have it as a suggestion, right? It just is the default layout, but they could add stuff. But when it's locked for anyone else in the user role kind of stuff that we were exploring, then they could edit that content, but they just can't add more to it. So if you have content, and then you switch the layout, like what do you want to happen there and how does that work? And if you've ever switched between page builders to visual text and stuff like that, it could be a little tricky.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that that's kind of what's being worked out because I agree, right? Like, wouldn't it be cool to switch stuff on the fly and have it figured out? But I think that's all kind of an evolution, definitely still being discussed. I remember reading about that in the last week or so.
Yeah, absolutely. And while we're on this, I apparently don't use any themes with Gutenberg that have page templates, but um, are page templates supported in Gutenberg yet?
They are now. I think it
Okay.
was like 4, 5, or 6 where they
I
dropped those.
I thought that was the case, but I like haven't been able to independently confirm because I'm like working and I'm like, oh, this theme doesn't have page templates. I'll do it later.
Yeah, and while that doesn't at the moment translate into a nice API to be able to swap out templates and things like that automatically, it does let you easily introduce Gutenberg ready templates into your theme. So you could just push an update that has a Gutenberg ready template that's all styled to be 100% width and have the columns and everything like that. So that could be I think a cool win for folks to know that that's there and you can kind of work around that. Yeah, because you wouldn't have to dynamically figure out if it's Gutenberg. You could just say, choose this template. Hey, our theme's Gutenberg compatible, right? So
Mhm.
go get it.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of APIs, Roy Sivan,
Ooh, that sweet thing.
yeah.
Yeah, let's pull that
Um,
up.
I just posted the link in the chat.
Hey,
He
yo.
created a very interesting plugin that kind of what converts and retrieves Gutenberg blocks via a REST API, right? So it kind of parses out the HTML content comments that Gutenberg generates and passes it as a REST API response, which is super duper neat.
Yeah. Yeah. So it has its own database record too, I believe. But this is so cool because this hasn't super been talked about, right? All the blocks are in content, but how do we pull those out and how do we save them in different ways? And he kind of, in this article, which I highly suggest if you're technically, you go and read and check out because it's really cool that he's doing this. People are definitely thinking about it. I know when I was in the UK for WordCamp London and talking with Pragmatic, that they had some folks there that were thinking about um, how to store what they're calling content blocks. Oh, I guess that makes sense. Content blocks because it's blocks, and have data stored with those and be able to pull them out and query them and work and like, ooh, now we're getting clever and close to this kind of networky type setup where you can pull and get what you want, which is super cool. I mean, I don't know and how practical for the average theme developer, right, or site builder it is, but for folks that are aware of this and are looking for something like this, definitely go check out what he's doing.
Absolutely. I mean there's a ton of possibilities here. You know, just having that data separate from the content is useful, right? Maybe you want stats on what blocks are being used. Maybe you're running a staging environment and you want to be able to reliably import these blocks without wiping out things or something like that. You know, having that data saved and kind of abstracted away from just the content area and HTML blocks is useful. And I know a lot of people, well, I know a handful of people at least who customize the WordPress admin experience. And this is something that maybe will allow them to continue to do that
Hmm.
even when WordPress 5.0 comes out while taking advantage of the new editor. So, as Zach said, if you are technically inclined, this is a very interesting article to read. Roy does a lot of really cool stuff. And
Yeah.
I'm like always impressed with, hey, I just made this thing tonight. I'm like, well, all right.
Yes, that is true and has been for a while, and this is no exception.
Yeah.
So I really like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's see. We gotten a couple of questions. Um, let's start with the most recent one. Batter GLX. What about plugins like ACF? Are they compatible with Gutenberg? Um, uh, if you joined us late, we spent a good bit of time earlier talking about that. The short answer is, you can still use ACF with 5.0 or Gutenberg. But we recommend that you take a look at what the ACF developers are saying as far as official compatibility or official word goes. They are aware of and are actively developing for Gutenberg, and that's about as much as we know right now.
Yep.
So, and then Mike asked, you guys have any thoughts about the featured image placement in the editor? Would it make sense for themes to show that image in line with the content in the editor? That's a really good question.
It is.
And especially, especially because Gutenberg gives you something closer to a WYSIWYG experience. I think that would absolutely make sense. Um, there are, just off the top of my head, probably a couple of technical hurdles to get over. Like, you'd have to look at the template for whatever post type you're on. Let's say just the post. If you're creating a new post, Gutenberg might have to look at that template and say, all right, where's the featured image? Is it above the title? Then we put it there. Is it below the title? We put it there. Is it somewhere else? Um, And then, how far do you go from there? Do you add the post meta where that is, and stuff like that? But I think it makes sense with the featured image most, because you have that big cover image block now. And if you have some sort of conflict there, it might look weird, give the user or the content editor kind of the wrong idea as far as what their content will look like when it's published.
Yeah, there's nothing more frustrating than working with like themes that either have featured image displayed and you can't turn it off, or don't have it where you do want it, or you had it one way and then you switch to another theme that's another way, right? So that's definitely an important thing to consider. I could think of a few different ways that yeah, I mean, more integration is great, right? Because if you could detect the block type or the featured or the template that is selected, and you could say, hey, when this is selected, then don't show the featured image block because I already have it baked in, or vice versa. Otherwise, show it and let them move it around. Um, Being able to play with that is something that is super handy. Um, and as Gutenberg moves away from, let's think about this, as theming moves away from really building out templates and letting Gutenberg potentially or ideally maybe handle more of that, then it might make, I don't know if it makes sense for that to be in the editor. Maybe it does. And eventually even it's in the customizer and you could place it on the page and things like that. So having it in a block format, I think will definitely come, but until maybe some of those issues could be worked out. I don't know. It might not actually be a different situation than currently when some people drop their featured image in the content area because they want it to
Right.
show up and it doesn't, right? So,
Right.
um, yeah, great question. I hope you were thinking about this a ton, Mike, and feel free to share your thoughts on it as well in there because, yeah, definitely a good one to consider.
Absolutely. And along with that, there's a lot more to think about. That question can open up a whole other can of worms. And Gutenberg is focusing solely on the editor right now, but as Zach alluded to, we're probably going to see it make its way into the customizer and maybe widget areas. And I know that one thing that um this really I Matt Medeiros told me about this really simple plugin. I think if we say his name 3 times, he'll just appear here.
Yeah, you're
Um
going to get trolled on the internet.
I know. But he told me about this really neat plugin a while ago that's just like hide the page title. Um
Ah,
which
love that one.
right, it's a great plugin because people might want to place text above or a featured image above. And with Gutenberg, it's not hard to imagine making that the title draggable, right? And then maybe we won't need the separate featured image. Maybe we still want it because we want that flexibility to call it, or we have the featured image block where we can drag it above the title or below the title, however we want. So, um, 5.0 and Gutenberg in its current form is definitely the first step in, I think, what will be a long march towards like a fully customizable experience within WordPress.
Yeah, I do imagine though, just one last thought on that is that even if it becomes a block, you still will likely be able to query it in
Hmm.
PHP independently. So whether that's meta or, stored the way it normally is, you'll still probably have that option. So what communication you could do between it and um, figuring out if that block is being used, that sort of thing, might fall on the theme developer.
Right. Which would make Roy's plugin even more useful, right? If you're abstracting that information out, you send a
Yeah.
post ID and you get the block that is the featured image block, right? So we're like totally blue skying it right now. This is future news.
Quote
So
us, folks, coming out next week.
you can quote us on that. Cool, but that's everything that I have. Zach, do you have anything else?
No, man, I think that that covers it pretty well, man. Things are continuing to develop. I will throw out there, there's a, I had the opportunity to speak at WordPress DC meetup, one of my, well, not one of my local camp. And that was super cool. And it's a tweet that went out a little slightly misquoted, but talking about how like it's 90% done, Gutenberg ready to go. And I don't know that we're that far along unless you count, the last 10% has taken 90% of the time. But
Mhm.
things are definitely evolving. They're still rapidly happening. Some really big questions now are starting to be asked, which is, I think, showing that we're getting closer to that oh geez, what do we need to consider everything for merge and all the effects, and it's moving maybe out of the editor itself, although I know people would have, 1,000 GitHub issues to challenge that. Definitely still bonking along and working well. Would love to see columns get a little love and refinement, but still coming along.
Yeah, absolutely. They did get a little bit in I think it was the point 0.6 release. And so it's nice to see that they are very cognizant of that. They know how useful that is.
Yeah,
Um,
it's huge.
but yeah, I think the canary in the coal mine for when we will know that the Gutenberg team feels Gutenberg is very close to merge is when we see WordPress 4.9.6 comes out with that call to action for people to try it, right? When they really start putting it front and center um, in front of users that are not necessarily completely embedded in the WordPress community, and that's still a lot of people, right? Freelancers all the time are saying my client has no idea what Gutenberg is. When we see it put front and center in front of that community, we'll know that the development team feels it's getting very close. Um, so there's that. We did get one more question about via the form asking about discount codes. The best way for you to get a discount code is to go to your local meetup and see if your local meetup folks have reached out to us. We are offering a 40% discount to any meetups that are talking about Gutenberg. So if you are interested in that, feel free to get in touch with us. If you go specifically for my course, I got a nice sponsor for my course. So there's a thank you coupon code if you head over to my course. You'll have to go over there to find out who it is and what it is, though. So and that's a nice discount as well. But yeah, if you run a WordPress meetup and you would like to offer a Gutenberg discount code, or you want to talk about Gutenberg, reach
Yeah,
out to us.
speaking at a
And
WordCamp or something. Totally.
yeah, right, yeah. Any WordPress related events, we'll say. Um, so that's the best way for you to get a discount code for either Zach or my course. Um, cool, and I think that's everything I got.
We're going to talk about nested blocks next time and maybe some more column stuff.
Yeah, perfect. That sounds good. We'll get that on the agenda.
Cool.
Um, cool. Thanks to everybody for watching. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments for this video or head over to gutenberg.courses/ask us and sign up for the mailing list there, ask your question there. You can find me, Jay Casabona on Twitter. Zach, where can people find you?
Z Gordon and the Gutenberg.courses. You could find our stuff there.
Awesome. Thanks everybody. Until next time. I don't have a good sign out for this yet. Go block your time. Ba-da-ba.
Nailed it.
Bye.